Welcome, I'm the Conspiracy Man. In this series, we'll be blowing the lid off many of the world's biggest conspiracies that the man doesn't want you to know about. The end of the world as we know it has been predicted so many different times throughout world history and is a concept present in many religious texts and other forms of fiction. One of the more famous apocalypses that never were was the Mayan 2012 apocalypse. This was when the Mayan long count calendar would end, and thus the world would end too. Surprisingly, 2012 came and went without a cataclysmic pole shift, or asteroid, or ancient Mayan gods cracking the earth open. The problem with this prediction is the Mayans themselves. These guys from millennia ago knew the world would end? Their ability to predict disaster would seem to be lacking, since they couldn't even predict their own. The Mayan civilization itself fell into decline around the 10th century. Christians predicting the rapture and subsequent end of the world is a common occurrence. Californian engineer Harold Camping predicted the world would end in 2011 by applying math to the Bible. Spoiler alert, in 2011 the rapture didn't happen, and Camping said he'd been wrong to try and predict it in the first place. There were countless predictions of astronomy-linked doomsday. Asteroids, comets, solar flares, pole shifts, supernova, aliens, and even whole planets like Nibiru. Sometimes these things end bad. Or good, I suppose, since the world doesn't end. But badly for the believers, as with the Heaven's Gate cult suicides. Why have all these predictions come to naught? To explain, let's look at one particular cataclysmic prediction, that of Dorothy Martin in the 1950s. Martin was a Chicago housewife who received messages from a mystical planet that told her the world would end in a flood on December 21, 1954. But her and her followers would be saved by the aliens. So her followers quit their jobs and sold their possessions, but the time of doom came and went. Everyone was disappointed, but then the aliens sent Martin another message that said the group had spread so much light that God had saved the world from destruction. It might sound like they were making excuses for being wrong, but they were right. The reason it didn't come true was because they believed it. Predicting and having people believe in the end of the world is what actually prevents it from happening. Kinda like The Secret, but in reverse. If you really want it, it won't happen. This idea may seem nonsensical, but there are parallels to this idea in several fields of science. In physics, the act of measurement can affect what is being measured. For example, in thermodynamics, a thermometer draws some of the heat of what it is measuring. In the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics, physical systems do not have definite properties until measured. Until then, they exist in all possible states. This is the observer effect, where all possibilities are possible until it is observed, and thus only one can be. A famous example of this is Schrodinger's cat, from famous physicist and cat murderer Edwin Schrödinger. In this experiment, a cat is put in a sealed box with a trap that may or may not go off and kill the cat. Until one opens the box, the cat is simultaneously both alive and dead. But when one opens the box and looks inside, the cat is either alive or dead. Thus, observing it determines the state of the cat. I would assume that you could tell if the cat was alive when in the box, since you could hear it screaming and clawing to get out. But I guess Schrödinger had murdered so many cats, he just tuned it out and could no longer hear it. Maybe he prefers dogs. Certainly for the biblical ones, it makes even more sense, since God would likely be pissed off if someone predicted the rapture, and would stop it happening just to fuck with that person for having the chutzpah to try and predict the divine will of God. Like with the Camping 2011 prediction. So when some nut comes up to you predicting the end of the world, give them a hug and believe them. It's the only way to save the world. I myself shall be constantly predicting the world will end. It's the only way to ensure the world won't end. No need to thank me. I'm just doing my duty to mankind. Provided I am not taken out by the powers that be, I shall return. If the world doesn't end. What conspiracy will I be prognosticating? Well, let me just say, the deadly sin of gluttony. Scared? You should be.